Yeah, dear learners, this is the new blocks of the contemporary political thoughts that is of the Masters of Arts in Political Science. And the name of the course that is Contemporary Political Thoughts. And in this block, this is the second lectures that is Collapse of Capitalisms and Theory of Breakdowns. Here I will talk in details about the capitalisms and breakdowns about the world economy. The concept of the collapse of capitalism is a central theme in classical Marxist theory, particularly in the works of the Karl Marx. Marx predicated that capitalism is an economic system would inevitably collapse due to its inherent contradictions and a structural weakness. This idea has a cornerstones of the Marxist thoughts, although it has been debated, revised, and critiqued over the times. Below is details explanations of the collapse of the capitalism according to Marxist theory. Inherent contradictions of the capitalisms. Marx identified several key contradictions within the capitalist system that he believed would ultimately lead to its downfalls. Contradictions between social productions and private appropriations. In capitalism, productions is a social in nature, meaning that goods are produced by a collective workforce. However, the profits from these productions are privately appropriated by the capitalist owners of the means of productions. This creates a fundamental conflict between the collective natures of productions and individual nature of profit makings. Next, that is anarchy of productions. Capitalism is characterized by competitions among individual capitalists, which leads to the uncoordinated and chaotic productions. Each capitalist productions goods with the aim of maximize profits without considering the overall needs of the society. This can lead to the overproductions where more goods are produced than the sold, resulting in economic crisis. Next, that is the falling rate of the profits. That means Marx argued that there is a tendency for the rate of profit to fall over the time in capitalist economy. As capitalists invest more in the machinery and technology, constant capitals, and less in labor variable capitals. The proportionals of profit derived from the exploitations of labor decrease. This falling rate of profits skews capitalist profit, leading to economic instability. Overproductions and under reconsumptions. Capitalist has a key tendency to produce more goods than can be consumed by the populations. This is because the working class, which form the majority of the consumers, is paid less than the value of what is the produce. Wages are kept low to maximize profit. This leads to a situations where there is a glut of goods that cannot be sold, causing economic crisis of the overproductions. Next, that is economic crisis as a precursor to collapse. That means cycle crisis. Marx believed that capitalism is a prone to cycles economic crisis due to its inherent contradictions. These crises are period of economic downturns marked by the high unemployment, falling wages, bankruptcy, and general declines in economic activity. Each crisis is seen as a step closer to eventual collapse of the capitalism, and they reveals the system's inevitability to manage its contradictions. Intensifications of the crisis. Marx argued that with each successive crisis, the contradictions of capitalism would become more severe. As capitalists struggle to maintain profit, they may cut wages, lay off workers, or increase the working hours, further exacerbating social tensions. These measures may be temporarily alleviated the crisis, but ultimately deepen the systems of the problems. Concentrations of the capitals. Economic crises tend to lead to the concentrations of capitals in fewer hands. A small business go bankrupt and large corporations absorb them, leading to monopoly and oligarchy. These concentrations expedited economic inequality and create a small elites of super wealthy capitalist things. These concentrations exploited economic inequality and created a small elites of super wealthy capitalists, further alienating the working class. This is very important part. Next thing, that is the social and political implications, class struggle. Class struggle is one of the important theories that is Marx believe that the inherent exploitations of workers under the capitalisms would lead to the increasing the class consciousness among the proletariat class as the conditions of the working class deteriorated due to the economic crisis and falling rate of profits. Workers would become more aware of their exploitations and began to organize against the capitalist system. Polarizations of the society, capitalisms, according to Marx, lead to the polarizations of society into the two main classes, that is bourgeois capitalist class and the proletariat class. The middle class or the PT bourgeoisie would gradually disappear as a small business are absorbed by the larger ones, leading to a society divided between a small groups of wealthy capitalists and a large impoverished working class. Revolutionary potential. Marx argued that capitalism continue to be exhibited social inequality and economic crisis. The working class would eventually rise up the revolutionary. These revolutions would overthrow the capitalist system and replace it within the socialisms, where the means of the productions are collectively owned and controlled by the working class. Next, that is the role of a state and the ideology in the capitalism system. A state is an instrument of the capitalist class. In Marxist theory, a state under capitalism functions as an instrument of capitalist class, maintaining the conditions necessary for capitalist exploitations. The state enforce property rights, suppress worker uprisings, and manage economic crisis to ensure the survival of the capitalism. Next is that is ideological control. Capitalists also rely on the ideological control to maintain its dominance. The ruling class promotes ideology that justify the capitalist system, such as the beliefs in individualism, the free markets, and the notions that capitalism is the natural and best economic system. These ideologies are disseminated through the institutions like the media, educations, and religions. Crisis of legitimacy. As economic crises become more severe and contradictions of capitalism more apparent, the legitimacy of the capitalist states and its ideological apparatus may begin to erode. Workers may increasingly reject the dominant capitalist ideology, leading to a crisis of legitimacy for ruling class. Next is that is the inevitable collapse and transitions to socialism. Final crisis and revolutions. Marx believed that contradictions of capitalism would eventually culminate in the final catastrophic crisis that would make the system unsustainable, and the crisis would be marked by extreme economic and social upheaval, leading to the breakdowns of the capitalist states. Proletarian revolutions. In the aftermath of the final crisis, the working class would seize the opportunity to overthrow the capitalist system through a revolutions. These revolutions would establish a dictatorship of the proletariats where the working class would hold political powers and begin the transitions to socialisms. Transitions to socialisms. After the revolutions, the proletariats would work to dismantle the remains of the capitalist system and establish a socialist economy. In socialism, the means of productions would be collectively owned and democratically controlled, ensuring that wealth, wealth produced by the society is distributed according to the need rather than the profits. Next, that is the critics and revisions. Edward Bernstein's and revisionisms. As mentioned earlier, Edward Weinstein challenged Marx's theory of the inevitable collapse of the capitalism. Weinstein argued that capitalism had shown the resilience and adaptability that socialism could be achieved through the gradual reforms rather than revolutions. He believed that contradictions of capitalism could be managed and mitigated through the democratic means. Contemporary view, while the orthodox Marxist view of capitalism's is inevitable collapse has been critics, particularly after the resilience of capitalism through the various crises, modern neo-Marxist and critical theory continue to explore how capitalism might raise new forms of crisis, particularly in the context of globalizations, finalizations, and environmental degradations global financial crisis and beyond. Even like the global financial crisis of the 2007 and 2008 have led to the some to revisionist Marxist idea about the instability of capitalism. However, these crises have also demonstrated capitalism's ability to adapt through the state interventions, bailouts, and reforms, and raising the questions about the inevitability of its collapse. Next is that is I am talking about the collapse of the capitalisms. That is the theory of capitalisms is collapse is a central but contentious aspects of the Marxist theory. While Marx outlined the inherent contradictions he believed that would lead to the system downfall, history has shown that capitalism has proven more resilient and adaptable than he predicted. However, the fundamental issue more resilient and adaptable than he predicted, and the fundamental issue of economic inequality, social injustice, and cyclical crisis remain a relevance, leading to ongoing debates about the futures of capitalism and the potential for systematic change. Now come to the next important theory, that is the theory of the breakdowns. Theory of the breakdowns, often referred to by its German terms, and is a concept within the classical Marxisms that assert capitalism will inevitably collapse due to its internal contradictions. This theory posted that a structural flaw and contradiction inherent in the capitalist mode of productions will lead to recurrence crisis, ultimately resulting in the system breakdowns and, transitions to socialism. Here is a detailed explanation of this theory. Foundations of the theory of the breakdown. The theory of breakdown is rooted in several key elements of the Marxist theory. First important that is historical materialism. When we're talking about the historical materialisms, Marx view that material conditions, particularly the mode of productions, shape the social, political, and ideological structure of the society. The developments of these material conditions is marked by the class struggle, which derives historical changes. Second important thing that is the called capital accumulations. In capitalism, the drive for profit leads capitalists to continuously reinvestment surplus value to accumulate more capitals. This process is central to the functionings of the capitalisms, but also generate contradictions that contribute to the system instability. Next important things of the foundations of the theory of breakdown, that is economic crisis. Marx argued that capitalism is prone to periodic economic crises which are symptom to its inherent contradictions. These crises intentionally are over the time weakening the systems and setting the stages for its eventual breakdowns. Next, key contradictions leading to the breakdowns. The theory of breakdown identifies several contradictions within the capitalist that drive it towards the collapse. First is that is the falling rates of the profits. Marx's law of the tendency of the rate of profit to fall. Marx theorized that compete, they invest more in machinery, technology, and raw materials relative to the labor's since profit is derived from the exploitations of the labor. The reductions in the proportions of labor in productions leads to a falling rate of the profits over the time. Crisis implications: as the rate of the profit falls, capitalists face declines returns on their investments. This forced them to cut costs by reducing wages, laying off workers, or increasing the intensity of labor. And we are talking about the social tensions and leading to the overproductions of the cases. Next is overproductions and underconsumptions. Overproductions: capitalist competitive natures drive capitalists to produce more goods than the market can absorb. This leads to an oversupply of goods, causing prices to fall and profit to shrink. Under consumptions. At the same times, the working class, where labor produce these goods, is paid less than the value of what is produced. This wage suppressions limit of the purchasing power of the working, creating a situations where they cannot afford to buy back to the goods they produce, leading to a crisis of underconsumptions. Cycle of the crisis: these dynamics create a viscous cycles of overproductions, stay outside unconsumptions, leading to economic crises that become increasingly severe over the times. Next important the theory of the breakdown, that is the concentrations and centralizations of the capital, that is monopolizations, and economic crisis leads to the concentrations of capitals in fewer hands as a small and medium sized enterprises go bankrupt and absorbed by the largest corporations. This process, known as centralizations of capital, result in the formations of the monopoly and oligarchies. Worsening inequality: the concentrations of wealth and power in a small capitalist elite experiences economic inequality and creating a growth divide between the bourgeois and the proletariat class. Social polarizations: this inequality contradicts into social polarizations, increasing the class antagomies and pushing society close to revolutionary conditions. Next, that is the crisis of over accumulations. Over accumulations, over times, capitalist accumulations, more capitals than can be profitably invested. This lead to the excess capitals which cannot find productive outlay within the economy, leading to a speculative bubbles or the investments in unproductive activity. Next is that is the financial crisis. Overconsumptions often results in financial crisis as a speculative investments collapse, leading to a massive loss, bankruptcy, and economic downturns. This crisis can trigger broader economics collapse, further destabilizing the capitalisms. Economic crisis as a systems of breakdowns. When we're talking about the Marx and subsequent Marxist theory viewed economic crisis not as anomaly but as integral to the capitalist system, these crises serve as both indicators and accelerators of the system's breakdowns. Cyclical crisis: capitalists experience cyclical crisis due to the inherent contradictions. Each cycle typically include periods of expansions, contradictions, recessions, recovery. However, Marxists argue that these crises become more severe over the times, eventually leading to a systematic breakdowns. Crisis of realizations: this occur when capitalists cannot sell their goods at a profit due to overproductions and underconsumptions, leading to widespread economic downtrends. Crisis of accumulations occurs when the capitalist class can no longer find profitable avenue for investments, leading to stagnations and financial crisis. Next is that is the role of class struggles in breakdowns, that is called the proletarizations. A capitalist advancement, more workers become a proletarians reliant on the selling their labor power for the wages. The working class grow in a size and become more concentrations in the urban area and large industry which can facilitate organizations and resistance, increase exploitations to maintain profit in the face of falling rates. Capitalists intensify the exploitations of labor, increasing working hours, cutting wages, and reducing the working conditions. This increased class consciousness among the workers and their willingness to engage in collective actions. And next one, that is revolutionary potential. Marx believed that as a capitalism crisis deepened, the working class would become increasingly aware of its exploitation, the system of unsustainability. This awareness would lead to the formations of revolutionary movements aimed at overthrowing the capitalisms. Next is that is the financial breakdowns and transitions to the socialisms. Catastrophic crisis. This theory of breakdown is posed that capitalism will eventually face to the catastrophic crisis that it cannot be overcome. This crisis will be so severe that it undermines the system's ability to function, leading to widespread social, economic, and political instability. Revolutions in the wake of this final crisis, this proletariat, now a politically convinced and organized class, would rise up to overthrow the capitalist system. These revolutions would involve the seizures of the means of production and dismantles of the capitalist state apparatus. Dictatorship of the proletariats. Following the revolutions, Marx envisaged a transition state in which the working class would hold a political power. This dictatorship of the proletariats would surprising the remains of the bourgeois and recognize society along the socialist lines. Next is that is transitions to the communism. The socialist state would eventually lead to the developments of a classless, stateless society, communism, where the means of productions collectively owned and goods are produced and distributed according to the needs, not to the profits. Critics and review of the theory of the breakdowns, that is Edward Weinstein's revisionism. Weinstein challenges the inevitables of the capitalism's collapse, arguing that capitalism had demonstrated resilience and the capacity to adopt through the reforms. He suggested that socialism could be achieved through the gradual democratic reforms rather than a catastrophic breakdowns. Rosa Lembert's contributions, while Luxemburg agreed that with much of the Marx analysis, she emphasized the role of imperialisms and the exploitations of non-capitalisms as a temporary fix for the capitalist crisis. She believes that once these regions were fully integrated into the capitalist system, the final breakdown would become inevitable. Neo-Marxist and contemporary perspectives. Some modern the kind of the theory of breakdown to accounts for the challenges in capitalism, such as globalizations, functionalizations, and role of the state in stabilizing the economy. They argue that while capitalism has adaptations in contradictions, still exist and could lead to the future breakdown under the different forms. Next is that is contemporary relevance. When we're talking about the financial crisis, the global financial crisis of the 2007 and 8 and subsequent economic turmoils have legitimated interest in the theory of breakdown. Some theorists argue that these crises are manifestations of the contradictions of the Marx identified through the which they point to capitalism's ability to recover as evidence of its adaptability. Environmental crisis. Some contemporary theorists like the theory of breakdowns to the environmental issue arguing that capitalism is unsustainable exploitations of natural resources could lead to the ecological collapse which could trigger or coincides with the economic breakdowns. Next is global inequality and social unrest. Increasing global inequality and social unrest are seen by some evidence that capitalism is heading to a breakdowns as a system becomes increasingly unable to access the needs of the majority. And this is the concluding part of the theory of the breakdowns. The theory of breakdowns remains a significant theory, debates aspects of the Marxist theory. It underscored the belief that capitalism contains inherent contradictions that will ultimately lead to its collapse and transition to socialism. While this a specific of how and when this breakdown might occur have been revised and debated, the core idea that capitalism is unstable and crisis-prone continue to influence the both academic discussions and political movement around the world. Thank you for hearing the lectures. Thank you too much for the hearings.